Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis show. On this episode, I hope we don't get into the science, but we might. We might get into science. I don't know because that's scary. We've got a good friend of mine, Leanna Schwend, joining us. And the reason I said that is because, well, she does that stuff. She is a scientist. I'll call it. You probably don't call yourself that, being a pharmacist, but ain't that the same thing? I mean, there's
There's
your
some chemistry involved.
chemistry, science, as Braden will tell us, hard science. Uh, right. So what I'd love to learn, just getting us started, is so many people come from families with businesses, and it's it used to be kind of, it used to be, and we're talking like medieval times, like your son, your daughter became the apprentice, right? Nowadays it's like, no, I ain't doing none of that stuff mom and dad did. I'm out. Nope, nope, nope. It was this rebellious, even subconsciously rebellious, but you stepped right into mom and dad's business, right?
Yeah.
What was that? Why? I mean, what was the pull?
Yeah. So for me, my heart's just always been in healthcare, helping others, and so yeah, my parents they bought Yellowstone Pharmacy in 1984. I was born in 1986, so I literally grew up in this environment. I can remember, taking my stuffed animals to work with my parents and setting them up in the back and playing in the basement of the pharmacy with the crutches and the wheelchairs and having races and, just all that stuff. So it was definitely an environment that I grew to love. I love my community. It's home. It's just, for a while, I really liked optometry. I thought eyes were really cool. And so in high school for a little bit, I was like, I think I'm going to do this. But, by my senior year, it's what I wanted. And so, yeah, just that's the path that I chose.
So there was never any like other than the little flirting with optometry, there was never any of that. Well, you know what? I'm going to be an artist. There was never that
Ooh.
feeling.
I
I'll show
don't
them.
I don't have that creative side, unfortunately. I need teammates for that part, for sure. I do have a huge passion for children and kids. So that is the other big piece of my heart. But as far as, my career, that's probably, it's always been healthcare and in particular pharmacy, independent pharmacy. So yeah.
Did you feel pushed towards it at all? Because I always think there's an interesting balance of like wanting to be like your parent, wanting to do what they did, but then also, if they try to get you to do it too much, then you're gonna, like you said, Dad, rebel and go do something else.
Right.
Was there much of a push for you to follow in their footsteps?
Not really a push. In fact, almost a little bit the opposite, moments of opposite, I guess I would say. If you think about these old time pharmacies, you just think people behind the counter, lick, stick, pour, and count, and just really married to the job. And that is kind of what my dad had to go through. By the time I went to school, I saw it changing. I saw what it could be. And so, growing up though, there were moments where he'd come home and like, do anything, Leanna, but don't do this, so just from the daily grind, I think that they did endure at times, and don't get me wrong, it's still a jungle out there. I mean, we are still doing all the things. But it has changed, and I do see where my vision can be, instilled in independent pharmacy. So yeah.
So did you have a big sea change when you took over from mom and dad? I mean, dad's probably, I'm thinking he's probably like me. I'm pretty comfortable with doing it this way. These things, the penicillin has always been on that shelf. it will always be on that shelf. I mean, that kind of
what we've called the man logic before of, well, this worked, why would I change it? Somebody showed me this, it worked, why would we change?
Oh yeah, and I'm telling you, the penicillin is still on that shelf.
Nope.
I mean, it is so funny actually. If I don't get many interns, but when I do, you know, we're probably one of the only pharmacies left that we still organize our medications under the brand name. And I kid you not, even when I came back from school, I'd be looking for this drug on the shelf and I'm like, you guys, where is this? And they'd throw out a brand name and I'm like, Hippocrates doesn't even have that listed anymore. That is not, like, the brand's gone, people. Like, but it is still on that place on the shelf. And you know, it's funny because a lot of my staff, you know, have been with us for, you know, my parents are the ones that originally hired them. There's probably just 2 new ones that I've brought on since I came home. And so yeah, there's that mentality of, you know, pieces of it, you know, this is how it's been and why change it. So happy to, you know, let some of those things roll. I know where the penicillin is, they know where it is. We can roll with that.
You alluded some to, you know, the changes inside, you know, the pharmacy industry. How do you approach that? Like you said, of like, you know, penicillin's still there, that's okay, but then looking for the other changes. What's your kind of approach to finding the things that are worth changing versus making like superficial changes, which I think a lot of people want to do, where like, I want to change everything, but then there's no really reason to change it.
Yeah. So the industry has changed so much. You know, a lot of the things that my parents, you know, there's things they didn't have to deal with that we do. You know, a lot of things with pharmacy benefit managers. You know, this term PBMs. You know, really watching reimbursements, really watching pricing. You know, I didn't go to business school. I went to pharmacy school. And so, you know, when I came home, I was like, what are all these things that are happening behind the scenes, you know? And so just really that awareness. So moving forward, you know, finding other streams of revenue, really training staff and employees to kind of watch these markers and be proactive, really working as a team, you know, thinking outside the box and, you know, the clinical service world and, you know, just there's a lot. I mean, a lot of programs out there.
Yeah. And you touched on something I wanted to ask about. It is just that. I mean, pharmacy school is just like any other of those sort of specialty schools where the great one is always a dentist and they're in that same boat, right? Here, you spend all this money, all this time becoming a dentist and nobody tells you how to run a dentist office. How'd you pick up the business sense? Dad had probably had a little bit. Did he give you some pointers or did he kind of kick you off the dock into the pond?
Yeah, no. So I did, you know, when I first graduated, I came back and kind of stepped into the manager role. So my dad is a pharmacist and my mom is actually the what we all call the brains. She's the business guru, she's the office accountant, you know, she was all of that. And so together they, you know, got to run this business. So I did get to see a lot of it. I was exposed to a lot of it, but I did stay more in the pharmacy side of it versus the business side of it. So then when I came in, it was you know, learning her role a little bit, but also outsourcing a lot of her role to, you know, to figure out where my time could be best spent in moving the business forward. So, yeah, they definitely exposed me to a lot. A lot of it's just been me reaching out to people who know their stuff too and learning from them. And yeah, it's been good.
Has the changes you were talking about, you know, looking for those different opportunities, did you approach that from the business side or the pharmacy side? And what I mean was, did you look at it from like the pharmacy side of like, these are the things I can do, here's how I can maybe apply them to the business? Or is it more from the other direction of like, you know, we need another revenue stream, what other things can we find, or a balance of the two?
Yeah, I'd say it's a balance. I'm a nerd. Like I love the clinical stuff. And so I'm always looking for ways to, how can I, as an independent pharmacist, put this service in my pharmacy? So, when I first graduated and came back, we implemented MedSync. So that's pretty common now, where we line up patients' medications to become due on the same day every month. So it's one monthly trip to the pharmacy. We can help patients become more adherent, help help them make sure they have refills on file, that sort of thing. We started immunizations, so flu, shingles, pneumonia. I started a diabetes education program, so I can actually educate patients and bill their insurance for this service. And then most recently, I just became certified in pharmacogenomics, which I believe is going to be a huge future of medicine. And so that's another clinical service. I haven't implemented it all the way yet, just working on that protocol to get that into my pharmacy as well. And then just looking, we have a huge front end. We're a full retail, over-the-counter gifts, CBD, just all the things. So just finding the right alliances and partnerships and, to help serve our community and make it a center of health and wellness.
How important do you think that education aspect is? You mentioned about it in the diabetes concept. I guess that's not the right word. Area. There we go. But that's one of the things whenever we have somebody in the more medical industry, pharmacy, anything like that on the show, and looking into it, there seems to be this gap of like the care, and then there's so much that needs to be done when you're not there, and like the education piece is so lacking in a lot of ways. I know, Dad, you and I have talked about our recent back surgeries and some of the lack of information that we got from doctors and those kind of things because it was COVID and all that stuff. But do you think that educational aspect is that big gap for the getting better outcomes for the patients?
Absolutely. I think it is key, and you're hitting on my purpose. I just want to be that bridge for people. So when you think about it, a patient goes in for their annual, they're screened, and their blood sugar is through the roof. They're told, guess what? You have type 2 diabetes. I'm going to give you a prescription for meter, test strips, lancets, a lancing device, and you're going to start on a once weekly injection and a prescription for metformin. Oh, by the way, you're at risk of heart disease, so now you're on a statin, and we should protect your kidneys with blood pressure medicine. And away they go. And it's like, there are people, diabetes educators, actually called diabetes care and education specialists now, are embedded all over, which is a program that I have at my pharmacy. But that also takes a referral and an appointment, and then convincing the patient to get there. So what happens in the meantime? That poor patient's just, well, now what? And so the education piece, to right off the bat help with the healthy coping of what just happened, just kind of seeing it is what it is, looking for the good in it. The more you look, the more you'll find, and then just letting all the rest go, the things you can't control. And so, to be able to be that bridge for patients, and especially in pharmacy, I have my hands on their medicine, to be able to obviously teach them and coach them through that. But there are limitations and barriers, time, reimbursements, all these things. But I think education is huge. And the biggest piece of that is helping patients see the value in investing in their health, investing in the education piece. Because when we talk about things like medication adherence, pharmacies are almost graded on this, whether our patients take their medications on time and refilled appropriately. We're basically graded on that, and it affects our reimbursement. And so we can do these things like tell them to set a reminder, put them on MedSync, but the root of it is, if patients don't believe in what they're taking or believe in the benefit, they're just not going to do it. And so the education is what the root of all that is.
Well, you said something earlier, and I got to go back to it because it sounded almost like a Sesame Street word. Pharmacogenomics.
Oh, yeah.
What the heck is pharmacogenomics?
Yeah.
I think you got that word about half right, Dad.
Oh,
It's okay. I had a friend call it pharmacogenomics or something. It was just the cutest thing. Yeah, no, it's basically it's the study of drug gene relationships. So it's basically, we all have our own unique genetic makeup, and we all have variations in that. And so how do those variations affect the way you personally metabolize medications? It's really big in mental health, in cardiometabolic disease, very specific drugs themselves, depending on your variations and everything. But it's basically precision-based medicine. So it's, why have you failed this antidepressant and this antidepressant and this antidepressant? Well, we should probably check your genetic makeup. And this also plays into, patients taking their medicine or not. If it doesn't work for them, or if they feel like it doesn't, they're not going to take it. So if we can do a test and say, your body uses this medicine like it should, or no wonder this didn't work for you, no wonder you're having adverse effects. That's, like I said, I just think it's the future of medicine. And I think pharmacists should take a hold of this, because we are the drug experts.
so what is the word? Camden says I didn't get it right. What is it then?
Pharmacogenomics.
Pharmacogenomics.
Yeah.
All right.
One thing that makes me think of a lot when you talk about like the effectiveness of different medicines and things is that there's this really interesting situation where, y'all, gesturing broadly to the medical field, are the experts in health and looking to provide all these answers. And then there's also these areas of it where, kind of like you're saying, things might not work for everybody. It's not a one size fit all solution. There's all these, question marks that come with really every industry and every, field of study. But yet y'all kind of get held to this higher standard almost of, well, it shouldn't. And I don't actually have the question there, but I just kind of want to throw that over to you. What do you think of that like layer of skepticism there? And then do you think that the only path to solving that is to, get better with the pharmacogenomic ding? Oh gosh, I can't talk crap to you, Dad. I wasn't even close.
You guys are making my day. Oh, yeah. So, for me, it does all come down to personalized and individualized, treatment, therapy, wellness, all these things. It is, needs to be patient focused. And so even when I talk about things like pharmacogenomics, well, here's your genetic makeup. One thing to keep in mind is, genetics load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. And so, it's so multifactorial. Even if we have this pharmacogenomic test, we do have to take into account your lifestyle, your diet, what other medicine are you on, all these things. So, and as far as being a healthcare professional, we are all practicing medicine. We are all learning. It's all evolving. And so, yeah.
Do you think that, and this is something I've thought about before, do you think that because of the industry, there is a need to be like, no, I am right on this? Whereas if you opened up a little bit of the, like, we're not 100% sure, it's 99.99, and that, do you think that would help with that layer of skepticism? Or do you think that opens up more room for doubt?
No, I think that's honest, because, that is the truth. There are no guarantees, there are no certainties. So yeah, I think being completely honest, there are limitations to tests. There are side effects. There are, just all these things. So I just think, really being truthful and honest and authentic with patients, it enhances the trust between one another, for sure.
How, well, this is kind of broad and a little all over the map, but how do you compete with like the CVS's and the Walgreens? I mean, I'm going to guess there's probably not one in your town yet. But just listening to you talk, there's a lot of value in having the mom and pop pharmacy. What happened to all of them here in the cities, if you will.
Yeah, it's really, really sad. And this is another big piece of my purpose as well. The industry is really tough. And so, just for, I think most independent pharmacies and pharmacists that work in this area, it is about relationships. It is about that personal care that, around here, we know why great grandma's in the nursing home. We have true relationships with our patients. We're able to not be seen as robots. We are able to do these clinical services. It's not someone on the phone in corporate doing it. And so the competition, though, that is tough, just the way that the industry is set up right now. We're looking at clawback fees that are hitting us, looking at, negative reimbursements on the act of dispensing up front, or a quarter later, it getting clawed back. And so, we might be in network with these PBMs, but they won't let us be preferred, or we can't be. And so sometimes it's forcing patients to use, the big guns and the mail orders and everything. So, I think it is just going to have to be always thinking outside the box, just always putting putting the patients first. It's tough. I'm not going to lie.
Is there a way that the mom and pops, the locally run, the independent pharmacists can restart and, in the cities when you've got, King Soopers, Safeways, CVS, Walmart, they've all got a pharmacy in them.
Mm-hmm. I think
Sam's and Costco even got pharmacies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think an independent startup, it's definitely doable. It's I think the key there is really finding that niche. Compounding pharmacies are very successful. Durable medical equipment pharmacies are very successful. There are more, cash only pharmacies starting to kind of pop up. So I think it's just really doing your research of the area, the demographics, what hole or gap can you fill? And sometimes it's maybe not your traditional retail. Just kind of depends on the area.
Yeah, I think, I'm thinking of, Tucson here, and how you can definitely, you talk about the different niches of different parts of Tucson with the more Hispanic populations, that getting somebody in there who can talk with them and communicate and really get a lot of those things set, versus where here, a lot of the standard for a lot of those groups of people is get something from the friend that still lives in Mexico and, get it back over here because it's so much cheaper and all that kind of stuff. But it's because they don't really see the path there. And I could see how, the independent pharmacy can really, plug that hole there. What I'm curious about is, do you think that is scalable? Because what I'm really seeing is that, to put it just into business terms, it's a business that relies on relationships. And that is the hardest thing to scale in the business world, because you got to keep those relationships at that same level and same quality. So do you think there's an ability to scale inside of those relationships from your experience?
I do. I think so. There's a lot of owners out there that have multiple stores. It's personally not something that I want to do. I don't see myself really wanting to open up another pharmacy. My kind of tribe, I guess, if you want to say, is this community. For sure, I want to ensure that this pharmacy stays open. We're the only pharmacy in this county. We're the only pharmacy. The next chain is 45 miles away. But with these competitors of mail order, and people drive every day 45 miles for their groceries and their medications. It's not a big deal for Montanans, that's normal. And so, finding ways to keep this here for my community. And then, as I said, to kind of be able to get out of my business a little bit so that I can help others. is definitely what I want to do. But sorry, I feel like I went off on a tangent. I do think it's scalable. I think there are very smart business people, that are doing that. They are opening more stores with the right partnerships, the right buying groups, the right, it's doable. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
the
just
thing
I was just gonna say it goes back to like, the stakeholders recognizing the situation. If you're going to, like, just to use the example because I used it earlier, South Tucson, and you're coming from Montana, you might want to hire somebody who grew up in South Tucson to talk with those people and help to build those relationships. But that is a scalable thing when you start to approach it from that direction, instead of just taking this copy and paste solution and then taking, the copy and paste solutions that fit, but then recognizing where those shortcomings are and then still looking to, solve those on the more local level.
Yeah, you're so right. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I was just going to say, all those big box store competitions, they all started with a single store. I mean, even Walmart started with one Walmart in Arkansas, and they scaled,
Yep.
so I mean, it's, if you, like you said, the right partnerships, the right relationship, people putting the people together. What keeps you in Montana? I mean, seriously, is it family? Is it what?
Yeah, it's all of it. I mean, it's family. So both my husband and I grew up here. We're high school sweethearts. So both of
Aren't
our
I supposed to say, "Oh, how cute" at that point?
Yeah,
That's what we're supposed to say.
All right.
You
Wait,
are
Dad,
supposed
ready?
to say-
1, 2, 3. Aw.
Aw.
Thanks, guys. I know I always tell people, I'm like, I feel like my story's so boring. But no, so yeah, both, our kids' grandparents are here, but Montana just has my heart. I mean, it will always be home. We get the best and worst of every season, and I actually love that. You can go from 100 miles in any direction and it's a different scenery. The outdoor life is, I mean, you're in Colorado, so it's very similar. So yeah, this will always be home in Montana, but I love to travel. I do. I love to throw things in a suitcase and go. So I love it all.
I was thinking about that the other day, that I think there's these two different types of people who enjoy traveling. And there's one where it's like they have this comfort, like, Dad, you always struck me like this. It's like, Colorado's home. Like, gosh, I can love these places. But it's like you can open yourself up to enjoy them because you got somewhere good to go back to. Whereas I've known some other people who travel and it's like they fall in love with the place a little too much. And then they leave, Memphis as an example. And they're like, gosh, why doesn't Tucson have a blues scene? Like, and it's like he starts to tear them down a little bit instead of being like, look, I love what I have, but I still want to go see the other stuff.
Right. Yep.
Well, and made me think of maybe you have a little twinge of adventure in you.
Oh yeah, a big twinge of adventure.
Yeah.
Bring me all the adventure.
You said, "Oh, my story's so boring." I'm thinking, yeah, I bet you there was a time when you were probably in your teens that you're out on horseback, that the mountain lion was following you, or you ran across a grizzly bear. Or, people forget that that's still an adventure.
Right? Yeah, you're very right. Just different kind.
One area I wanted to kind of bring it around to when we were talking about the education and those aspects of it, is the incentives around the patients to use the medicine and those type of things. So you used education as I guess cure is the word that comes to mind, but as an effective way to affect change inside of that. The economist in me is always playing with this thought experiment of you pay people to take the medicine and those type of things. Have you? And I also recognize that that's one of those. It's a fun thought experiment, but actually paying people to get medicine has some inverse effects because they're like, well, why are you paying me? Why can't I trust it? Type of thing. Do you think that there's some room to rethink that incentive problem? Whether payment might not make sense, in this specific case, but by educating to remove a little bit of those barriers, and then maybe some other form of incentive to kind of give them, not literally cash payments, but some sort of extra value. I joke with my friend who's in dental school all the time of like, when he starts his practice, like, I want to take a group of them and I'm going to pay them every time they brush their teeth so that he doesn't have to perform root canals. So the big picture, it saves him money. Like, it's all super fun thought experiments. But I also recognize that the thought experiments aren't very applicable all the time. So do you go through any of those thought experiments? Have you thought at all about playing with that incentive structure? Any ideas in there?
Yeah, I love that. Actually, I should think more on it, but I do have one example of that. One of the new services I brought in is therapeutic shoes for people with diabetes. So this is another Medicare benefit that a DME pharmacy can do. So I had to become a shoe fitter. That was fun training. Right before the pharmacogenomics stuff, I was literally going through like shoe fitting training. But so one of the things that I plan to do, patients that come to me to get fitted for shoes, I will give them a free education session on reducing risk by proper foot care, to give them that added value, hopefully so that they can see, like, yes, you're getting a product, but the education behind it is what matters. Why should we be protecting your feet? Like, we are going to prevent ER visits, foot amputations, wound care that's super expensive, getting infections and all this stuff. So I guess that's where my mind goes, as far as what can we do to exceed the value. A program like that I would love to do.
Do you think that, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, that some of that kind of like skepticism that we talked about, do you think a little bit of that comes from, and this is not a shot at the entire medical industry, I can't afford to do that, of course, but like, it's almost like the word that keeps coming to mind is like elitist, in the sense of like, no, just take the medicine. Come on, like, trust me. Like, do you think that's a little bit where that skepticism comes from? Because I keep thinking back to, it's like that there's a healthy skepticism that's, good, but then it reaches a point where people aren't taking the medicine, or they're not, getting, freaking polio vaccines. Polio's in New York now all of a sudden, like all these kind of things where it's like the skepticism's obviously going a little too far in some ways. Do you think it comes from that? And then I guess the second part of that is, do you think that goes back to just that authenticity?
Yeah, definitely. I think a big piece of that skepticism is the perception out there that healthcare providers are only able to see things one way. And this happens to me all the time. People hear I'm a pharmacist. They think I'm all Western medicine. I'm going to be a drug pusher. I'm going to, all this stuff. And it's not. And so that's where I do think it comes back to the relationship, because I believe what the patient believes. There's faith-based medicine, there's functional medicine, there's holistic medicine. So really just bridging those gaps to getting the patient the information that they need most and that they believe in. And then I would say, yes, sometimes I do try to change patients' perceptions of things. Like, if I had a family member that had a heart attack and they're telling me they're not going to go on Plavix after a stent placement because that's Western medicine, I'm going to work on you because
Right.
I want you on Plavix, that sort of thing. It's for nerds like me, all healthcare is fascinating. And so I love learning about it. I'll throw another word at you. It's called Nutrigenomics. It's another area I'm really interested in getting into, which is more kind of getting at the root cause of some diseases. What are you deficient in? What are your vitamin levels, your amino acid levels, and that sort of thing. But so I guess in a way, I still think it kind of just does come back to relationships and trust, and finding that right person for your healthcare team.
I think the interesting thing there, and this comes into a lot of problem solving in all sorts of different fields, is that you have these things that are, I guess you would almost say, and I don't have the science background here, but like almost, anecdotal evidence, like it worked for some person, that type of thing. And then there's this desire to scale that, like, and cure it for everybody. And that a lot of those things don't scale. And then people want to throw them out, rather than recognizing, no, it did work in some people, so maybe we can still use it for that group of people that it works for. The way I've joked about this with my friends a bunch is, it's like the placebo effect still in effect in a lot of ways. Like if you're giving sugar pills out to people and it's curing their cancer, shoot, keep giving those sugar pills out. Like if it's just tricking them, it doesn't really matter if it's getting that effect. Do you kind of approach that the similar type of way?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in the placebo effect. I mean, I feel like that works on me all the time. I mean, the mind's a powerful thing. So, yeah.
What do you do? How do you find the right people? I mean, you're such a small town. And I mean, the pool ain't that big. So how do you find the right people and keep them on the team?
Yeah. That is something we've been really fortunate with. We always look for people that are others focused, that can be team players, and, that want growth opportunities. But we do try to find lifers, because we are a small town and it is hard to find good people. And so, just making it worthwhile for them. So yeah, I don't know if this is the right way or the wrong way, but when it comes time to hire, a lot of times we go out and we'll put the job description out there, but we kind of have some candidates in mind to say, would you be interested in this? Just because we do know what it takes to want to be in this environment, and the kind of people we're looking for. So yeah, actually one of my pharmacists that I hired, I did find her on Indeed, but she lives like 40 miles away, was working in a chain. She had her own independent pharmacy like 60 miles away for a long, long time. And she drives 3 days a week to Forsyth to work with us, and she loves it. And so, yeah, we've been very fortunate.
How have you looked at that? Because there's a limited talent pool still. And do you look at that in the sense of trying to, bring in people from further away than you would have been looking, trying to, bring people up in the community? I get, that's really what I'm getting at, is it like an internal, like growing people, like you're going to the high school being like, you should be a pharmacist, and help, giving them a scholarship to go to school to come back to work for you? Or are you trying to find the people who already have the interest? How do you approach that?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I haven't gone to the high school yet, but I kind of like that
No
idea.
scholarships yet?
Haven't done that yet. I have been kind of targeting college students a little bit. And, there's a pharmacy school down the road, 6 hours away.
That is such a Montana phrase.
Right, I know.
6 hours.
Only 3 mountain passes I have to go through to get there. It's fine. Yeah, I haven't been back that way in a long time. But yeah, I do kind of like to start there, because, I like people who know Montana. And, what happens is when I put a thing out there and I get these calls, someone's interested in my job that I'm putting out there, and they're like, and I'm so happy you're in the park. Like, I always wanted to go to Yellowstone Park. And I'm like, no. Like, do your homework. We're on the Yellowstone River. Like, I'm 4 to 5 hours from the park. And, we're more prairies, plains, plateaus, hunting and fishing. We're not the mountains and hiking and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a balance for sure. I do like when people have experience under their belt, and can teach me. I mean, these pharmacists that do come in from chains and whatnot, they do have a wealth of knowledge in what that business model is like, and where they can, insert their skills into our pharmacy and everything. So it's a balance. Sometimes I like to grow them myself, and sometimes I like to bring them in all trained up.
Did you, speaking of Yellowstone, did you get a windfall from the TV show?
Yeah.
It was
I
probably
have
a
been
really good
playing
thing
off.
you had the URL already, wasn't it?
Yes, I have been playing off the Yellowstone hashtag like none other. And yeah, no, it's been good. I always said I was Yellowstone first.
There's a whole line of clothes right there, the
I
Yellowstone,
know.
little RX on it. Oh man.
I know we
I
have
was
these
gonna.
little bumper stickers that say I visited Yellowstone, and then in real small print it says Pharmacy of Forsyth.
Oh gosh, I thought you were going to say that you were going to fill a lot of prescriptions for the people out there doing stupid things, seeing people like, I could go be a cowboy real quick, get
Right?
kicked by horses and whatnot.
Yeah, do not pet the bison, please.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a little bit of Darwinism there in my book, but
Yep.
so where do you see things going? I mean, you're which is really neat. I tell you what, the your desire to learn, you refer to it as nerding out, but I find it fascinating that small town Forsyth, the one pharmacy there in 40 miles, you're doing cutting edge stuff.
Aw, thanks.
Leaping out there and saying, how do we do this next? So I'm going to challenge you. What is next? So you've got your pharmacogenomics and then your nutrigenomics. What's next? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, gosh. So there is an entrepreneur side of me. I'd like to do some train the trainer models, my own consulting. Like I said, adding value to independent pharmacies to help give them the upper edge in their communities. I'm fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. I am still working in my business right now, working to get the money in there so that I can hire more help and run. But a lot of these places can't devote this time. So to bring in ideas and implementation, products, just things that could help make them successful in this environment. But as far as the education and diabetes in particular, so I have type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed 11 years ago. And so that is a big project that I want to be able to be in the position to do, educate people so that they're not going home and looking on Google and just getting frightened. And what do you do if you can't afford healthy food and you're on a grocery budget? What do you do if you don't have transportation to get to your next doctor's appointment? Connecting people with the right information and the right source is just definitely something that's on the horizon for me. So
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and giving back and serving, which is, always such a great thing for everybody to do. I don't think we've had a single guest that hasn't had that sort of attitude on what's next, and how do they help more people. So that's really cool that you've done that. And I'm going to shift it to what did I learn? And I'm going to say the big fancy word, the pharmacogenomics, which
you nailed it.
You could tell both of us wrote it down the last time you said it.
I almost asked you to spell it, but I think I got it phonetically down.
All right.
Pharma's with an F, right? I mean,
always a PH in my world.
But it's one of those things that it's with the whole DNA thing that we have. Why can't we? I mean, with the computing technology and all that it's like, all right, you need to have 728 grams of Motrin 2.5 times a day or whatever, right? Instead of take the 800 grams, 3 times a day or just take this aspirin instead of that Motrin because the aspirin works better with you.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems simple. I'm hoping it becomes more prevalent because with the computing power we have, I don't see why wouldn't it be for everybody, other than the whole fact of, I mean, the government's already got all my DNA from my Army time. So no big deal there. But, for other folks, it's like, oh, I don't want my DNA out there. Well, then you ain't getting here. Take this one generic thing like everybody else, or you can have that option.
Yeah, and it is, medication misadventures is the 5th leading cause of death in the United States. So it used to be even more up there, but then COVID happened. So it got bumped down on the list a little bit, but I really believe this is a piece to that puzzle that can help with that.
Awesome. Cameron, how about you? What'd you learn?
And this is gonna sound like a joke, Dad, back to our rugby days where you'd ask us, what's the most important thing in this drill, or what's the most important thing? We'd always say communication. Well, talking through the incentives problems with Leanna, the education and communication is such a big aspect of it. Like it sounds like such a cop-out, just like on the rugby field of being like communication's the answer to everything. It's a cop-out answer, but also at the same time, there's so much truth to it that just communicating with people, having those relationships and educating people can do so much to, when I was talking about the incentive structures, you don't need to pay somebody if you can just talk with them to rework the incentive structure. And I don't know what your hourly cost is versus paying somebody per pill they take, but you probably come out positive on this end versus paying them to take the pills. But yeah, just the importance of the education and communication inside of it.
Leanna, how much how much did you make? No.
How much did you learn?
How much did you learn? What did you learn?
Gosh, more along the lines of thought-provoking, I guess, Camden asking these things about incentives, or more of an awareness of, getting patients to see the value, or what can we do to exceed the value, has really got my thinkers going now. So definitely appreciate that. And then just, the awareness of these different perceptions in healthcare, really just continue to be that bridge for people. Yeah.
Awesome. How do folks, I mean, if you want to give out the address to Yellowstone Pharmacy, you can. I don't think there's a whole lot of people just happen to be driving through the neighborhood, but how do folks find out, connect with you, maybe even, hire you as a consultant if they got an idea, maybe they want to start a pharmacy in Monument? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. So, the Yellowstone Pharmacy of Forsyth business, Facebook, and then www.yellowstonepharmacy.com. And then as far as some of my more educational things, I'm on social media as Yellowstone Farmer with a PH. And so, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And then I'm just Leanna Schwend on LinkedIn. So you're welcome to connect with me on there as well.
Oh, that's great. And this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time and the big word education. I was a little afraid. There was a couple of them, but
that's a $10 word.
Yeah, it is.
We usually don't go above $5.
$10 word. Yeah.
You've been promoted, boys.
Right. A little girl from the little town way up in Montana throwing out some big words. That's awesome.
Oh, awesome. It's been great. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Leanna Schwend, for joining us today. And of course, our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. Get started for free today at findyourpurpose.coach. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis Show on Instagram and Facebook, and please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Videos of the podcast are on our YouTube page, and you can always get a full archive of our episode at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.